This video is brought to you by CuriosityStream. If you click the link in the description, you can also get access to my streaming service Nebula for just $12 a year. You can watch the full version of this video with no scenes removed, or My Nebula Original, a brief history of synthesizers on Nebula today. Daft Punk were born into a changing world. Formed in France in 1993 by two friends who met in high school, the nature of music distribution, promotion, and even fame itself was evolving rapidly around them. Instead of buying into the cliches or trends of their generation, Daft Punk have achieved a level of timelessness by combining styles from the past with imagery from the future into a finished product fundamentally meant to be enjoyed in the moment. In short, Daft Punk are one of the best dance acts of all time. Let's talk about that. Daft Punk were founded in the early 90s in Paris, though its two members met in the late 80s while in high school. They went through a poorly received period of experimenting with guitar-based rock before changing their name to Daft Punk, in reference to a reviewer who called their music a daft, punky thrash. After changing their name, they started experimenting with drum machines and synthesizers, making demo tapes, and after a few years, securing a record deal with Virgin Records. Their first performance in the US was at a techno festival in Wisconsin in 1996. Around this time, they most often performed in simple Halloween or party masks, or even without any masks at all. Daft Punk's first album, Homework, was released in 1997. Thanks to previous singles and concert/festival appearances, Homework was described by the UK magazine Music as one of the most hyped debut albums in a long time. Other critics noted Homework for bringing together different club styles into one finished product. The record charted in 14 countries, mostly in Europe, and Daft Punk went on tour around the world for 12 months in 1997. Despite its popularity, I look back on Homework as a pretty rough debut without a lot of fully formed songs. Instead, it's made up of simple beats without a real sense of progression or melody, particularly the 7-minute tracks like Rock and Roll and Rollin' and Scratchin'. In short, Homework is a record for the club. While there's not much replay value in it today, at the time of its release it created a massive wave in the European music scene, and solidified Daft Punk as a group to watch, even if they were still working on the visual and musical identities that define them today. Fast forward a few years and Daft Punk have changed a lot. Their next album, Discovery, was a massive evolution from Homework. Musically inspired by Aphex Twin's Window Licker and 70s funk and disco, the group had started developing a new style of electronic music. They combined house and club music with pop, funk, and disco. The end result somehow sounded both retro and new, thanks to Daft Punk's modern production techniques and song structure. Discovery's second track, Aerodynamic, starts with a funky groove before a metallic electric guitar-based second half and a spacey electronic ending. Describing such intricate and well-produced tracks like this, Daft Punk's gold robot, Guy-Manuel de Homem-Christo, said this: "Every track is a mixture of many different experiments and tricks. It was much more complicated making this than Homework. It was really like jewelry work, working precisely, with so many different production techniques even in one song." He wasn't exaggerating. There are dozens of genres represented on Discovery. One More Time is a party banger with processed vocals. Superheroes sounds like a house version of Tangerine Dream, and Something About Us is a relaxed jazz R&B tune, while Night Vision offers a tranquil, almost soft rock atmosphere, enhanced by the rhythm of a muted kick drum. Throughout Discovery, Daft Punk played live keyboards, bass, and guitar, and then often sampled and even resampled their own recordings. Their preferred musical equipment included drum machines like the EMU SP1200 and Roland MPC, as well as synths such as the TR-909, TR-808, and the Juno 106. In addition to live recordings, Discovery makes use of equipment like the Roland S760 for sampling, which was a much more involved task before the advent of software sampling. Daft Punk used a number of samples from the 70s and 80s throughout the album, restructuring these clips to create catchy pop and dance melodies. The group also made heavy use of the Alesis 360, a dual-channel hardware compressor on both Homework and Discovery, to retune the sounds of their samples. The presence of heavy sampling on Homework and Discovery would come to define Daft Punk's sound, and Guy-Manuel described it this way: "Sometimes we use an instrument in a way that it was never created for." This method can be described using the French word bricolage. the art of combining found materials and incorporating them into something new. And I think bricolage is a pretty good way to describe Daft Punk's identity as a whole. Throughout their career, they've played with a lot of sounds and looks, building an aesthetic that's timelessly stylish because of how many different genres and mediums it draws from. And speaking of looks, I want to take a look at Daft Punk's visuals, which are, in my opinion, one of the most iconic visual identities of any musical project ever. Like I mentioned before, the duo didn't come up with their signature look until around when Discovery was released. Before then, they had used party masks and sometimes even performed with no masks at all. But when Homework charted in 14 countries, Daft Punk decided to double down on their desire for anonymity that was before just a quirky part of their presentation. Thomas Bangalter, the Silver Robot, told Face magazine in 2000 that he and Guy-Manuel had become robots on the 9th of September 1999. He said that their sampler crashed and exploded on them while they were making a song, and when they woke up after the explosion, they had become androids. He fleshed out the story even more, saying that after they turned into androids, they lost everything they had worked on, and that's why the music sounded completely different on Discovery. Ultimately, the story is just a story. At first, Daft Punk's true motivation for wearing masks was that they were shy. Over time, though, that shyness faded, but they kept wearing the masks. It turned out that the audience thought the masks were exciting. Because when you think of Daft Punk, you don't just think of their music, you think about their looks too. But privacy was a big part of it as well. In one of Daft Punk's earliest magazine interviews, Guy-Manuel said that they didn't want to be photographed, especially in magazines. They didn't want to be noticed on the street or have their personal lives inhibited by fame. To this day, Daft Punk rarely give interviews, and I think in many ways, this enigmatic persona is one of their strongest qualities. All we really know about them is those robot helmets, and this minimal yet strong presentation lets the music speak for itself. Plus, thanks to their strong visual identity, Daft Punk's helmets have become icons in their own right. One of the group's biggest inspirations for the masks was the 1974 film Phantom of the Paradise, a movie about a disfigured composer who dons a mask and goes on a quest to exact revenge on an evil record producer who stole his music. They also took inspiration from a French electronica band called Space, who were active in the 70s and known for wearing sci-fi masks and costumes. Daft Punk's third album, Human After All, dropped in 2005. It ended up being their most poorly received project yet, and it remains so to this day. Fans and critics alike found its production and format somewhat lazy and boring. Having been recorded in just 6 weeks, the album abandoned Daft Punk's previous disco and house influences for a new kind of minimalistic production based in heavier distorted guitars and electronics. To this day, Human After All is their lowest rated album online, with Pitchfork awarding it just a 4.9 out of 10. But we're not going to focus on that, because their next 3 projects ended up being among their very best. Their next release was Alive 2007, a live album recorded at an arena concert in Paris in June 2007. The set featured an assortment of Daft Punk songs, including tracks from Human After All, that were later reconsidered by fans and critics, after their live versions were found to be better in many ways than the studio recordings. To this day, Alive 2007 is considered one of the best Daft Punk releases, earning a rare 4 out of 5 on Rate Your Music and holding the second highest score out of all Daft Punk records on Metacritic. And to be honest, Alive 2007 does sound way better than Human After All. The songs they performed from Human After All sound much better here, with more emphasis on the low end, thanks to Daft Punk adjusting EQ and adding effects and sounds in real time during the show, using Ableton Live connected to MIDI controllers and input devices for mixing. They were able to destroy, shuffle, loop, and distort individual pieces of the mix, and the end product was actually pretty great. Daft Punk's next release was pretty much the opposite of Alive 2007. Tron Legacy, their first film score, was meticulously crafted using a combination of an 85-piece orchestra and Daft Punk's own signature synthwave style. Guy-Manuel said of the Tron Legacy score that Wendy Carlos, the composer of the original Tron film, was one of their main inspirations for the soundtrack. They also talked about how despite only having seen Tron a few times as children, it had imprinted on them strongly, and even influenced the visual identity of Daft Punk. Today, while the soundtrack isn't considered particularly interesting, there are a few songs that have stood the test of time and remain fan favorites. Derezed, for one, is among my favorite Daft Punk songs. If I had to choose my favorite Daft Punk album, I think it would be Random Access Memories. I know Discovery is regarded as better by a lot of people, but RAM just sounds so smooth. I genuinely feel like it's one of the best produced records of all time, at least according to my taste. And the way Daft Punk achieved this smoothness was by trying to make their use of tech almost invisible. During an interview with NPR, Thomas Bangalter said this: "We said it earlier in the same way that maybe Peter Jackson can use technology to tell the story of the Lord of the Rings. This record that we're doing here is not a technological record in the way where you would put technology on top of it. You're trying to hide it under." Even though they wanted the record to sound natural, they didn't shy away at all from using technology. They just wanted to use it well. In fact, later in the interview, Thomas used the song Touch as an example of invisible technology. The song Touch that we recorded and wrote with Paul Williams is an interesting example, he said. It's a song that has a certain timeless quality. There's definitely some Dixieland part in it, and some more psychedelic synthesizers, and some kids choir and a lot of effects. It has about 250 tracks in the song, and we could not have handled as many tracks 30 or 40 years ago. He went on to say, multi-tracks were limited to 24 tracks. You could maybe sync 2 multi-track tape recorders together, and that would give you around 48. But using 250 tracks to make this recording showed that we were trying to create something that's timeless, but at the same time using the up-to-date modern horsepower of computers today that was not even possible maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And that's why, to me, Random Access Memories is the perfect Daft Punk album. It feels like a culmination of all the sounds they've been experimenting with over the years, with a noticeable human touch to it as well. Their songwriting was more emotional and heartfelt as well, while collaborators like Chili Gonzalez, Julian Casablancas, and Pharrell Williams added a variety of stylistic elements. Honestly, I could make an entire video about Random Access Memories, and one day I probably will. The production, the lyrics, the presentation, they're all fascinating to me. But in the interest of time, I'm gonna leave it at this. RAM is the most human album yet by everyone's favorite Android duo. They finally perfected their formula of presenting styles of the past through a futuristic lens, and for that I consider RAM a modern classic. Daft Punk haven't released a record since 2013, but that doesn't mean they haven't been making music. They produced 4 tracks on Kanye's Yeezus in 2013, made songs with Pharrell Williams, and even more recently, produced 2 massive hit songs for The Weeknd. And even though it feels like it's been forever since their last studio album, the wait between Human After All and RAM was actually longer than the time since RAM's release until now. Ultimately, Daft Punk are one of the most enduring groups of the 21st century. I think in many ways this success is thanks to their commitment to privacy. The modern music industry thrives off of personality, and I think many musicians who are known primarily for their personalities end up fading in the long run. But Daft Punk essentially doesn't age. We don't know grimy or dramatic details about their lives, and they've never disgraced themselves to the public eye. To us, they're robots. Robots in shiny, light-up helmets that make brilliant, timeless music. It can be difficult to make videos about music on YouTube, because the second I include a single example of a song or sample, the copyright police show up, break my arms, and even worse, the video gets demonetized. For example, my most viewed video of all time has only earned me $100 in ad revenue. But someone has to make video essays about music, so I keep doing it anyway, even if I have to eat beans out of a can to stay alive. This is why my creator friends and I teamed up to build our own platform where creators don't need to worry about demonetization or the dreaded algorithm. It's called Nebula, and we're thrilled to be partnering with CuriosityStream. Nebula is a place where creators can do what they do best, create. It's a place where we can both house our content ad-free and also experiment with original content and new series that might not work on YouTube. In fact, if you liked this video, the version that I put up on Nebula removes this ad entirely and replaces it with a longer version that includes tons more song samples for a better and more interesting viewing experience. Nebula features lots of YouTube's top educational-ish creators like Wendover Productions, Polyphonic, Sam O'Nella, Adam Neely, and tons of others. We also get to experiment in ways that might not work on YouTube, like my new Nebula original where I analyze the history of synthesizers using various examples that would absolutely get my channel shut down if I put them on YouTube. So what does this have to do with CuriosityStream? Well, since CuriosityStream is the go-to source for documentaries online, they love educational content and educational creators. And we worked out a deal where if you sign up for CuriosityStream at the link below, not only can you get a 1-month free trial for CuriosityStream, you also get Nebula included for free. And to be clear, that Nebula subscription isn't a trial, it's free for as long as you're a CuriosityStream member. Since we've got to stay inside, we may as well be soothed by the voice of David Attenborough narrating tales about tiny hummingbirds, or join astronaut Chris Hadfield on a road trip through the universe, or just watch me talk about synthesizers for 15 minutes. So if you click the link in the description, you'll get a year's access to both CuriosityStream and Nebula for $19.99. Or you can go to curiositystream.com/Volksgeist. It's a great way to support this channel and educational content directly for just $19.99 per year. Just click on the link in the description or go to curiositystream.com/Volksgeist. Clicking on the link really helps out this channel.